Hello everyone! Today we got a really big post and message from the developers of Star Wars The Old Republic about some changes and new features in 7.0, the upcoming expansion, which will be called Legacy of the Sith, and still doesn't have quite a date. We know it will be coming out in holidays 2021. In this video, I'll be going over a bunch of the different messages that they shared with us about different parts of the game that will be changing. The first topic is the daily and weekly mission reset, and here's what they had to say about it. First, we're making some changes to how daily and weekly missions reset. Currently, uncompleted daily and weekly missions sit in that character's logs until the mission is completed. Once the mission is completed, that character can no longer pick up the weekly again for that week, or daily for that day. In 7.0, the expansion, uncompleted daily and weekly missions will be removed from players once the daily or weekly reset time passes. The primary reason for this change is that we are restructuring the way we present content each week. Weekly missions will rotate in availability each week in 7.0, and we want to ensure that all players are on the same weekly missions each week in order to keep those mission areas feeling dynamic and filled with other people to group or share mission credit with. This should result in content like heroic missions being completed more quickly and efficiently. You can still access missions that aren't part of the rotation if you choose, they will just have reduced rewards. Alongside these changes, we will also introduce a number of quality of life improvements, including auto-completing missions, where we are able to, when characters are in the turn-in step. So what does this mean for the average player? I'm fairly slow when it comes to completing missions, and I bet a lot of you are too, especially when it comes to the group ones. One of the really common missions that I have sitting in my log is the Veteran Mode Flashpoints weekly. It's something like complete 5 veteran flashpoints and then you get extra bonus rewards, and it's a pretty decent reward too. But I'll often do this over the course of weeks or even months, and eventually I'll get those 5 and I'll be really excited and get those extra rewards. How that's going to change in 7.0 is that if I want to get those extra weekly rewards, I'll have to do all of those flashpoints within the week. So the downside is that you will have to be a little more picky about what you're doing each week if your main goal is to specifically get rewards as fast as humanly possible. For example, you probably won't be running Hammer Station over and over and over. Instead, you'll be going after whatever is featured for the day or the week and completing it within the day or the week. The upside is everyone being kind of on the same page. We've actually seen issues in the current game where multiple players might be on different steps of a quest because of when they picked up a daily or weekly and it not auto-resetting. If you've had a chance to play the Feast of Prosperity, you may have noticed that maybe you picked up Hoth yesterday as your world boss quest for the Feast of Prosperity, and you didn't complete it that day. You come back the next day, you still have the Hoth quest, but everybody else is picking up the Corellia quest. In 7.0, that Hoth quest would automatically expire because it's a daily, and the new one would be available to everyone. I think it's going to be a bit of a frustrating change for players like me who are very slow and like to complete things over the course of months, possibly even years for some of my characters, but it will be good for funneling people into the same content together, so you might have an easier time finding the people to do those activities with. Next up is a topic that's near and dear to my heart, called economy adjustments. We have been studying and measuring economic indicators around the game's economy, specifically in regards to credit inflation. What this means is that more credits are being created in the economy than are being spent, which drives the GTN prices upwards over time on all items. One of the steps we're taking to address this is the reduction of credits awarded by completing conquests. We're also planning on removing solid resource matrix items from conquest rewards and instead putting them on Jawa vendors available for purchase with Jawa junk. This will help address credit creation issues in the economy. We'll be sharing more details on these changes in a follow-up post in the near future. So many of you may have seen that I made a video called The History of Credits, Inflation, and Exploits in the Game, and I thought it was pretty funny. This came just a few days later. I'm sure they were already working on it because they had already addressed it, the fact that they're aware of economy issues, a couple days before this post. But we know for sure a lot of quests, specifically Conquest especially. Conquest is really huge in generating credits out of nowhere. Like, you complete Conquest, suddenly you've got, I think it's over 100,000 credits per character. And you can do it for every character each week if you want, fairly easily. I do hope they continue to address it. This alone is probably not going to fix things, as I'm sure there's a lot of other quests in the game that are probably rewarding way too much credits. But I think they can't do too much until 7.0 comes, because it's going to be a bit rough to kind of dump all these changes on us at once before the actual update happens. So in short, we'll see what they do. Hopefully more. What I don't understand is the removal of the solid resource matrix item from Conquest rewards. I'm not quite sure how this is related to economy inflation. Maybe players are taking that item and selling it to a vendor instead of to the GTN? I don't know. There must be a reason, but it's not quite for the reason that they said. This next one I'm really excited about. So the third topic is shared tagging, and here's what they had to say about it. Another big improvement supporting the new weekly content rotation is shared tagging. When we refer to tagging, we're talking about who gets credit for defeating an NPC, an enemy, mission credit, and ability to loot primarily. Currently, the default tagging behavior is tied to whether or not the player is in a group or not. So if you're grouped with other players and someone in that group does damage to an NPC, credit is shared for the entire group. But for 7.0, we are changing this default behavior to be tied to the faction instead. So if a player is attacking an NPC and another player of the same faction helps kill the NPC, whether grouped up or not, both players will share mission credit and loot that NPC. In some cases, we will allow credit to be shared with any player regardless of faction. The first content that will take advantage of this open tagging will be world bosses. This should minimize griefing opportunities and really encourage players to help each other out in order to defeat these bosses. As an added bonus, we've also updated the rules for tagging to include healers. In addition to dealing damage to an NPC in order to tag it for credit, healing another player who has damaged that NPC will also grant credit. This is really great for any groups that do things out in the open world. Star Wars: The Old Republic has been really behind the curve of the way games are played when it comes to open world tagging. Most newer games do support people not in your group being able to help in your fight, or you being able to help theirs. My second favorite game is actually Guild Wars 2, and the entire game is based on this concept that if you see a fight happening, you can go jump in, and you can also share in the credit as well as anything that drops. In Star Wars: The Old Republic, imagine you're fighting a boss and someone happens to wander by. Right now you have to try and invite them to the group. Sometimes it's hard. Sometimes they may not even know what a group is. But now if they happen to see you fighting a world boss, they can jump in and just help, and everybody wins. You also don't have to fight for a world boss if you've got two different groups going. What I'm really hoping for, and I'm not sure if this post is addressing it or not, let's say you're out on Coruscant, you're working on some basic questing as part of your story, and there's an area where you need to kill 25 people in the area. Does everyone in the area help you with that quest? If so, that's really going to make questing a very positive thing, as you'll no longer have to fight over enemies. I'm wondering if this will also eventually apply to quest nodes, the ones that take a really long time to respawn, or you have to fight with someone else for them. We'll see, I guess. Some questions I see pop up are things like, how will it work if you put together a group of 5 for Dreadtooth and anyone can now pile in and get a chance at dropping that mask or essence? How will Nightmare Pilgrim work, the boss where you can only have 16 people fight it, or he eats everyone's face? I guess we'll see. The next segment is going to cause players who play stealth characters at a very high-end level to cry, and I'm sorry. I feel bad that this is being taken away, but I feel like it was never meant to work this way to start with. So here we go. Combat change, Vanish. Currently, Vanish allows players to circumvent intended game mechanics, especially ones that require a target. It also allows for players to revive out of combat, and changes their ability discipline in the middle of an encounter. Vanish abilities are being slightly redesigned to remove unintended use, specifically dropping from combat and reviving in specified situations. For those of you who play Operations, you may be familiar with the idea of a stealth res. I'm familiar because I'm a tank and I die a lot, and stealth res is often my savior. So let's go on. For all flashpoints in Operations, Vanish abilities will instantly drop all threat and allow players to enter stealth at max level. However, players will no longer exit combat. This restriction does not apply to the open world, PvE, PvP, or war zones. We understand the benefit of resurrecting more frequently in group content, so we are removing the operation-wide lockout timer from combat resing. As a balance measure, we've made it so only healing disciplines have access to combat revives. We'll be monitoring this and adjust the cooldown as needed. So this is a super big change to the game. I'm under the opinion that stealth res was not something that was ever intended to be done. It was not really designed as part of the fights, but it's something that's become a huge tactic and something I've definitely benefited from as someone who dies a lot in operations. So another big change is that people who are not healers will not be able to revive. Kind of makes sense to me. Gonna be sad though, I like in my big story mode groups, especially with 16 people, I like being able to yell out, "Hey sorcerers, hey operatives, if you can, revive someone." Since there was only a 30-second cooldown timer there for reviving people. But it does sound like it will change, and it'll be only healers. However, there will no longer be a raid-wide lockout timer, which is going to kind of change the game a lot. So in the past, in story mode, what would happen is someone would die, someone would revive them, then someone else would die, usually a few seconds later, and we'd have to wait 30 seconds from the last time we revived to revive the next person. And the other restriction was that the original healer that revived them, they also had their own personal timer of give or take somewhere between 2 to 5 minutes. I think it's based on your alacrity. And we'd have to have the other healer revive them, so that's why I'd often call out, "Hey sorcerer, hey operative, come revive them," so we could spread it out a bit more. So now we won't have to wait that 30 seconds. That 30 seconds is much higher in the more difficult modes of operations too. But we'll still be restricted by the number of healers that we have in our group, so each healer will be able to revive once until their own personal timer goes away, from what I understand. And the final note in this first post is something I'm incredibly excited about, and I want to cover more in a separate video, give it its due time, and that is weapons in the outfit designer. Oh yes, that means you'll be able to use any weapon you pick up off the ground or earned cosmetically without having to worry about the stats, which will be covered by a separate weapon. Much like you can wear whatever stats for armor right now, you can wear that set that you picked up for level 75, but also look like a fashion Barbie using the outfit designer without worrying about your stats. In addition, they also made a completely separate post about legendary items, and this is something I'm also very interested in, but I don't know much about, so we'll be covering that in a separate video as well. I hope you enjoyed the look over of the news coming out about 7.0, and I feel like we're going to be getting more and more as we get closer to the expansion's launch. Hope you guys have a great day, and as always, may the Force be with you. If you want to show your support for these in-depth news videos, visit Swtorista.com/support. And if you want to see similar Star Wars The Old Republic 7.0 videos show up on your YouTube homepage, subscribe to this channel.